Ex-homeless redditors, what was the scariest thing that you ever saw on the streets? NSFW. Kids beating the shit out of a homeless man. Started with them spitting on him. He gets up and runs after them. Then a couple of them hit him from behind with some IKEA looking wood. I know the one that snaps easy. He gets mad and they run off. He comes back to the bench and falls asleep again. 10 minimums later they're back and they just start beating the freaking shit out of him. I had to jump in and stop them. A woman giving birth at a bus terminal. Cold weather. I thought I was going to die one night. I was so cold. I remember waking up thinking you need to move or you are going to die. This was the scariest thing for me. I ended up sleeping in buses, burning sterno. It's like jelly dropping alcohol that burns for a good while. I would try to constantly be walking cause if I stopped it'd probably fall asleep and die. I also sometimes rested under a bridge from time to time. One time I fell asleep under the bridge and I woke up finally feeling warm and cozy and thought it was nice to finally be able to rest. Then I realized that it's way too cold for this and I can't move without that frozen fingers pain everywhere. Struggled real hard to get my sterno out and could barely bend my fingers enough to light it. Like my hands were nearly useless. I'm really glad I woke up. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Edit second. All you guys telling me you're glad I woke up got me feeling all warm and fuzzy inside. I haven't felt this happy to be alive for a long time. Thank you. Was homeless for a summer and an acquaintance through the party scene of the town invited me to crash on her couch. Woke up in the middle of the night to her screaming into her phone about how they are out to get her and are setting the world up for destruction. Pretended like I was still asleep and got out there the next day real quick. Lots of stabbings and grapes. I was stalked by a gang one night on my way home from work. I still have no idea how I wasn't raped or mugged. Once I woke up suddenly to a not homeless man holding a huge knife staring at me inside the abandoned building's basement I was sleeping in. Once he noticed I was awake he asked if I was Russian. I said no and he said he was looking for a different girl, gave me $20 and left. Edit. If you can read this and immediately think yes, it's the best idea to send this woman disgustingly perverse messages and ask for nudes. I hope your decks stay flaccid for eternity. I've never been homeless, but I work in a homelessness service. One of my colleagues had been homeless and was telling me about it. He said he had a sleeping bag and a small tent in the woods that he used to sleep in. I said I would be too scared to do that. He then tells me when sleeping in a city center he was pissed on multiple times and was set fire to once, and he would rather take the very slim chance of bumping into a killer looking for people in a forest at night. People are freaking decks. Not what I saw, what I heard, if that counts. For a while I slept in an empty warehouse, in the UK, so it was a huge Victorian building with about 6 floors. I slept on the 3rd or 4th floor, out of the way of casual intruders. Drunks and prostitutes used that space, and one night I heard a load of shouting and a female screaming from the ground floor. Now I was 16, a junkie and about 120 pounds, so I wasn't in any position to do much, but I crept down the steps to see what was happening. By the time I got there, the place was empty and the noise had stopped, so I went back upstairs. I found out the next day they found a body in the wasteland outside. Turns out the woman was a prostitute. They assumed her client stabbed her after a struggle and she'd made a run for it before he caught her and finished the job. Always wonder if I'd been able to help, but it'd have probably got stabbed too. Snow. I'm a big scary dude, so I never had trouble with people picking on me or whatever. In that sense the streets were safe to me, but seeing snow for the first time that year just made me cry and panic. It was too early for snow. I wasn't ready for that type of cold and was hoping to be on my feet again before the winter came. Beautiful thing like snow just fricked me up in so many ways. I saw a really angry bald man aggressively masturbating his flaccid deck. TBH, that was probably the most scary thing. I was just sleeping around where other guys in my city sleep, then just see some teens stabbing one of the homeless guys multiple times. Ran away from there, never turned back. People who had been homeless way longer than me. Trust me, there is nothing scarier on the streets than the meth couple who this has been their day in and day out for 1000s of days. Biggest thing 53. 115 pounds was how often people try to abduct you. That and how often people try to serve you tampered food. The teenagers trying to get clout by assaulting / pranking you is another one. When I was 17 I worked at a little pizzeria. Some nights we have leftover pizzas that were meant to sell by the slice. This particular night I had a full Supreme and I decided to bring it home instead of throwing it away. It was raining that night. While driving home I see a homeless person under an overpass and decide to give him this whole pizza. I pull back around, explain to him that I work at a place and I wanted to give him this whole pizza. He refused to accept it and said that I'd probably baked sea crochets into it or something. I was pretty upset by this and it kinda ruined my desire to give for years. But you talking about people giving you tampered food made me feel like this guy had every reason to be suspicious of me. Everyone is gonna try to steal from your ass, so watch your shoot. Keep your mouth shut and find a good place that is desolated from nocturnal animals and assholes. I had been homeless for a couple weeks now and had made friends with this couple. They seemed pretty chill, but had a bit of a drinking problem. Anyway, one night I was sleeping, could hear some commotion going on, couldn't make out who it was or what was going on until my buddy comes and sits on my sleeping bag, blood pumping out of his neck, like full on. Every time his heartbeat it would splurt out, not under huge pressure, but it was pretty bad. I asked him what happened, and he said he think his missus had cut his throat with a Stanley blade. He was so drunk he was not aware of how bad his injury was, and insisted I did not call an ambulance. So I called the police, they called the ambulance. I see the dude a couple days later, still homeless, scar on his neck. He's ever so grateful the nurse had told him how lucky he was. He was literally a couple millimeters away from dying that night. Edit. I'm no longer homeless. This all happened about 6 years ago now. I no longer speak to him. This is another long story. She was arrested but not charged. Last year she committed suicide, so she's no longer with us. In my years being a homeless junkie and then cleaning up kinda and working at a homeless shelter / on the street, I saw a dude try to murder his girlfriend with a machete, like full on swing and barely miss, and my heart was pounding, like I was sure I was about to witness a murder. I also saw countless odds and shoot, saw a girl beaten to shoot who had just been raped asking for help. Saw a dude get stabbed. Saw a big huge dude have a heart attack and die, and the paramedics frantically trying to give him chest compressions and shoot, and he was just flopping around. Saw a lot of shoot honestly, but those were the ones that come to mind as scaring the shoot out of me the most. I have a million stories from those years and half sound fake cause they are so ridiculous. There is a drainage ditch in my area that the local homeless people tend to bed down in. A few years ago, when I found myself destitute, I spent one night down there. That night I witnessed a Molotov get thrown into another dude's spot, which led to a huge fire that ran rampant through the area. Yeah, I bought a tent the next day and started camping in the local mountains. Oh god. I was homeless in Seattle for many years. I've seen some horrible things, ranging from bum fights that ended in one of them dead, to people next to the downtown masses stepping over an overdosed dead body that they thought was just someone sleeping. But the worst thing was probably seeing this methed out drug dealer guy who, at the time, had a bad reputation already on the hill, throw a 15-year-old homeless teen girl over an overpass bridge onto the freeway. She was killed. Edit. Wow, everyone. Thanks for all the recognition, questions, interest, and kind words. Seriously didn't realize my experiences would gain that much attention. There are some far worse memories here, and I just want to continue to remind everyone that these things happen in every large homeless population. Help the homeless, don't judge and bashoot them. There's a lot of amazing things you can do for the homeless in your city, including organizing homeless feeds, or giving out essential bags filled with dry socks / underwear, hand sanitizer, toothbrush / toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, a granola bar / trail mix / nuts / high calorie or protein snacks, bottled water, face / body wipes, etc. If you can, donate some sleeping bags or jackets to shelters or even a homeless person themselves. And don't film yourself for clout. Filming yourself giving homeless people things they so desperately need is cringe to me. Do it out of the kindness of your heart, not for likes and upvotes. After a meal at a local shelter one night I fell asleep in a park. I hated being around there at night because some of the other homeless would rob you. One guy got knifed a week earlier and I needed to GTFO. So I started to make my way out of the area, taking alleyways as not to attract the drunks who would throw, shoot at, beat up and generally harass the destitute. I heard a commotion and decided to investigate and saw this crazy animal of man, naked from the waist down, on top of someone, I assume a woman, thrusting on top of her. Every couple of seconds he would stop to throw a punch. The woman was unconscious, completely limp and very bloody. I yelled out to him, and he turned to look at me. I have seen a lot of bad things in my life, but the look in his eyes was beyond animalistic. He was filthy, but in the little light from the street lamps his eyes glowed with rage and insanity. Scared the shit out of me. So afraid that I took off. Ran to nearest payphone 1993 and dialed 911. I did not go back. I have felt like such a coward, and have no idea what happened to either one. I truly hope she's okay, and he is dead. There's a YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly which interviews prostitutes, disturbed homeless, drug addicts, tricks, gang members, etc. In LA's Skid Row. To them, gang rape, torture and murder are common on the street. Listening to their stories is cray. The scariest thing I saw was a man named Tony T. Apparently he had been a cokehead for years, but had to keep a job to support his habit. He had received a huge settlement, over $500K, at which point he decided that he never had to work again. He lived on the streets and smoked cocaine all day. The best way to describe him is Tuco from Breaking Bad. He was generous with his drugs, so people would naturally want to be around him. But he was unpredictable and dangerous. I have tons of stories about him being crazy aggressive, but the last time I saw him, he beat a man with a pipe for dropping a tiny crack rock in the dirt. We are talking like $20 worth of dope, and he probably either killed the guy or fricked him up for life. I tried to stop him, and he threatened to turn on me. I walked out, went to a phone, and called my sister to come get me. She helped me get my shoot together, and I never went back. That was 30 years ago. So I lived in my car, but I remember seeing this woman and talking to her outside a store when I was just chilling eating some food, and she told me she had been homeless literally her entire life and had never slept on a proper bed in her life. I asked how old she was. She told me she was 53. It was scary to me because I realized that that could have easily been me. I think about that woman every single day. I was staying in a homeless shelter that had a men's side and a woman's side. Most of the men were convicted sex offenders. In the 8 months I spent in that hell on earth, I was friends with 3 women who were raped by some of these, and they're truly scary thing. The women were actively discouraged from telling anyone what had happened, especially the police. If they filed a report with the police, they were permanently barred from the shelter. That place, one of the most celebrated in my state, regularly has the mayor and governor drop by, is the most evil place on earth. Eater, the Pine Street Inn, Boston, Massachusetts. It just didn't occur to me to say where, cause I never expected many people to see this. Also Eater, the grapes didn't take place inside the shelters. The men stayed in one building, the women in another. The grapes took place outside, after dark, in areas that didn't have good CCTV coverage. And tie for my first awards. Not that scary, but one time I was on a park bench just killing time. This homeless dude, that everyone called Red, was at another bench. He came up to mine and asked if I would watch his shoot while he slept for a bit, and I said yes. So he laid down next to me, and after a while he sat up for a cigarette. About 3 drags in, he starts coughing, and his face turned all purple fast. Never realized how fast people turn purple from lack of oxygen. He fell over on his side, and I jumped up and gave him a little smack on the back a few times, and I kept yelling at him to get up. I was hesitant to call an ambulance cause of hospital bills that he obviously wouldn't be able to pay, but right as I took my phone out to call, he had been unconscious for like 30 seconds. At this point he starts gasping and gets up. I asked him if he was okay, and all he says is freaking COPD, and then takes a drag of the cigarette that he never even dropped the whole time that happened. Blows my mind he didn't drop it, LMAO. I don't know if it counts, but I lived in a van for a month or so when I was in college and would sleep at the park. I didn't necessarily see it, but I heard it, and it is burned into my mind forever. A group of the local hobos beat a guy near to death and they all raped his girlfriend/wife then beat her to death. I found a new park after that. I was working in a mountain town and couldn't afford rent, even with 2 jobs. One night I was wasted after work. Me and a work friend were always there by ourselves closing, so the bar was free game. Left work at 2 AM, walked the hour and a half back to my tent outside of town. While being stalked by a mountain lion, I assume I looked injured and could be an easy meal. It was terrifying. I had a digital camera with me, so I just kept pointing it in the area of the ridge where I could hear it walking and flashed repeatedly. Made it home safe. Another night after closing, different campsite. I must have smelled like a huge gyro after working a double at Pittis in Paradise. Got into my sleeping bag in my tent. I was just about to doze off when I heard big crunches of a black bear sniffing me out. I was frozen with terror. The bear put his about against the nylon inches above my head. Hot steam on my face. I had pulled the sleeping bag up to my cheeks, petrified when I slapped the bear's nose above my forehead. It was an involuntary reaction, and I felt stupid, but I spooked the bear, and it took off. I got an apartment with some friends soon after. This isn't remotely scary, it's more just freaked up. After we lost our home, we stayed in a motel for a while, but due to occupancy rules I slept in the car in the parking lot. One night a woman parks next to me in the lot, and the security guard shows up, and they literally spent the next 3 hours getting high, talking, and then freaking in the car. The entire time I'm in the next parking space trying to ignore them and look at my phone. LPT. If a random drug dealer asks you for a ride home, don't say yes. If you do say yes, have extra keys with you. Almost got graped. After driving a random drug dealer I bought drugs from home. Dude stole my keys out of the ignition and said he needed his deck wet if I wanted my keys back. Pretended to start crying to make things awkward. He got out of the car with my keys, locked doors, got my spare keys out, and floored it out of there. All sorts of the usual shoot, dicey situations with dicey people. But the one where I was spine-chilling terrified. I had found a seemingly nice quiet cut in the woods, shade, private, IMSET. I wake up to a most guttural yowl at 2 AM. A pack of feral cats that the adjacent 50-year-old Rainman had lured to his property with cans of wet food. They stood on the fence yowling, eyes reflecting as we stared the other down. I was homeless in Hawaii for a month after I got out of the army. Nothing I saw was ever like "oh shoot a mad eye," but there are a lot of homeless meth heads wandering the streets. I watched people having arguments with a spoon they were holding, people eating sand at the beach, people wearing week old shoot caked pants. Meth is freaking wild. Stick to weed and shrooms. Waking up to a shotgun being pointed directly at my head. I wasn't truly homeless, but had no money or bank card, and was trying to get back to my parents following nearly being strangled to death by my ex. The actual fight happened whilst we were out, so I had no spare, no clothes. I'd left my wallet at his, and only had a dying phone on me. I tried getting money for a train, but only really managed enough for a bus fare to the next town, and decided to try hitchhiking. Late into the night I gave up, and managed to sneak into a barn, where I was able to get comfortable enough to sleep. Turns out I didn't close the door enough and the farmer found me in the morning. After taking his gun to investigate, he woke me up. I think he coughed loudly with the gun painted at me, and I nearly shat myself. It asked me what I thought I was doing in his barn, and quizzed me on how I got in. He asked to see my arms before he lowered the gun and he started chatting. He was quite nice though, and after talking to him for a while he took me back to his house, and fed me, and let me have a shower.